Hi, welcome back to Power of Storytime. I'm Kate, the creative director of Calling Card Books and Z Girls Press. And every Wednesday at noon we read from one of our children's or kids' books, and this week we're going to continue reading from The Passage at Moose Beach by Michael Foster. We've read a few chapters for the past couple weeks, so if you've missed out on those, the videos are available on our YouTube channel or Facebook page, so you can catch up. There's interviews with the author, Michael Foster, and a reading of the first couple chapters. So you can meet Alicia and see the beginning of her adventure. Where we left off last week, she had just disappeared while spending an afternoon on...
There she is.
Oh, there's Alicia, our heroine. Yeah, she had just disappeared from sight on Moose Beach while she was spending a nice afternoon swimming with her father. And over here, we have some artwork that's in the book by a very talented artist named Gloria Miller Allen. She lives in Idaho near where the cabin is, and we're so lucky to have someone who's done such beautiful work on both of these books. She did the artwork on the cover and on the insides. She's incredibly talented and has all sorts of certifications. And if you'd like to learn a bit more about her or see her work, her website is gloriamillerallen.com. And we appreciate you joining us for Power of Storytime. Again, we do this on Wednesdays and also Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We read from some of our fiction and nonfiction adult titles. We'll probably be doing a little bit more coloring from our Jane Austen coloring book this Friday. So we'd love you to join us for that. And we so much appreciate everybody's support in tuning in, and for those of you who've purchased our books from our website, callingcardbooks.com, or through your local indie bookstore. It not only helps us as the publisher, but it helps the authors, the printers, and if you order through an indie bookstore, it helps them as well. So together we can create a little community and creativity and companionship in this kind of crazy time. But I'll go ahead and get back into The Passage at Moose Beach. So we just had finished up chapter 4, so now we're starting chapter 5, Realizations. As Alicia stepped forward, she sensed and felt a shift in reality. A pushing through as if encountering an extraordinarily large gust of wind that she had to use all of her energy to move past. She braced and leaned hard into the wind, and for just a moment the hair on her arms stood up as if lifted by static electricity. As quickly as the wind stirred up, it abruptly stopped and everything was normal again. But somehow it felt a little different. The green of the trees was a dark, almost emerald color, not like the trees she knew, which were more of a dusty green. Everything looked a little brighter, and the air felt warmer against her skin than it did a few minutes ago, before that crazy wind. Alicia suddenly noticed the slapping of the lake's waves behind her had disappeared, and was replaced by a sound like a gentle whisper of wind through tall grasses. She stood in awe for a moment, one hand on her hip and the other scratching her head as she tried to recognize what was around her. "Hi!" Alicia looked around, but did not see her dad or anyone else. Who was talking to her? "I said hi. You don't have to be rude and not say it back." Alicia continued to look around, not recognizing anything and feeling totally confused. All she saw was one golden-mantled squirrel, abundant in the area, on an old stump of a pine tree. She knew from experience that they were incredibly friendly and sociable, especially if you had nuts or some other snack to offer. Sitting in the chair outside of the cabin, you could be sure that sooner or later a squirrel would be on your lap, poking around for a delicious treat. But for the most part, they were silent, except for when they chattered at one another for hogging all the food. Her furrowed brow showed the confused state of mind she found herself in. Could this voice she was hearing really be coming from that furry little thing, or was she dreaming? "Are you talking to me?" she asked half-jokingly, looking at the squirrel but expecting no answer. "Yes, I'm talking to you," the squirrel replied. It stood up on its hind legs and stared at her, his tiny arms crossed in a scolding manner. I've said hi twice, and you so rudely did not say hi back. Alicia's mouth fell open so wide with surprise that you could see every one of her molars, and she found herself at a loss for words. No, that simply cannot be, she thought as she glanced around. Surely someone hiding behind a tree was playing a tremendous joke on her. That's a great way to catch flies, but not so great for talking. Alicia was sure the voice seemed to come directly from the squirrel. Say hi back. Hello, Alicia replied cautiously, deciding to play along for the moment. Is that a question or a... The tiny creature shook his head with disappointment. Never mind, you certainly are a strange one. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mickey. Again, her mouth fell open. The squirrel was actually speaking to her. Was she going crazy? Mickey? She asked, her confusion showing through the slow, thoughtful delivery of the familiar name. Oh, like Mickey Mouse. The squirrel's small grin turned into a small but angry-looking frown. He huffed a retort. Do I look like a mouse to you? You know, since the barrier went up, no humans have visited here. I heard stories passed down through generations of how generous your kind is, especially with treats. But you're the first human child. You are a human, right? You're the first one I've ever seen here in my whole entire life, and so far, I am not impressed. Are all humans as rude as you? Alicia was taken aback, not only by the fact that here she was talking to a squirrel of all things, but that it appeared he was giving her a good scolding. Yes, I'm human, she exclaimed, and no, you don't look like a mouse. But he's the only talking rodent I've ever heard of, so you can imagine my surprise. She relaxed her neck and shoulders, which she suddenly realized were stiff as a board. If this is really happening, and she wasn't sure if she might be dreaming, then she should suppose she would play along. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mickey. My name is Alicia, and I do apologize for my rudeness. I'm going to let that rodent comment slide, because it's a beautiful day, and right now I'm in a good mood. The tiny creature's tail moved around for the first time since their encounter, first left, then right, then up, and finally securely back down on the tree stump in a soft and relaxed fashion. Be warned, however, if you use that slur again, his little tail shot straight up again, I'll not be so forgiving. Now, do you have some food? Alicia paused, ignoring the question, and looked around for the first time since hearing Mickey's voice. She realized that the small squirrel was right. The rain, which had been light but insistent, had completely stopped, and she could see the sunlight shining brightly through the trees. It was a beautiful day. What happened to the storm? Storm? What storm? Are you daft as well as rude? Mickey shook his head in disbelief as at the silliness being spoken by the human child. There has been nothing but brief sprinkles of rain in the sky for a long time now, and even that gets sucked up quickly. In fact, it has become a serious problem. With the land drying up, many of us forest creatures are getting quite thirsty. Mickey smacked his lips, realizing he needed a drink. Thirsty? But you have an entire lake filled with water right here, Alicia said as she turned around to point to the water behind her. But to her shock and confusion, the lake was no longer there. All that remained was a vast meadow of grass, slowly turning brown under the hot sun. Oh my gosh, where was her dad? 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 Who are you talking to? My dad, he was right here a moment ago. She pointed to where he had pushed through the lake, where she had pushed through the windy portal. Where is he? Where's the lake? She felt a lump forming in her throat and was not going to let it get the best of her. Where is everything? Alicia asked fearfully. Silly girl, you left that all behind when you crossed over to the wild side, Mickey explained patiently. Next, we're going on to Chapter 6, The Wild Side. Alicia stared in stunned silence at the meadow that, in her mind anyway, was once a beautiful lake. As she watched, a small bunny bounded away through the grass, startling a previously unseen flock of birds into flight. She didn't understand any of this. Her father was just right there a moment ago. Her beloved lake, the boat, the cabin on the other side. There and now, were they really gone? It made no sense, none at all. Maybe she really was going crazy. What did the squirrel say about the wild side? What does that even mean? Alicia turned back towards the small squirrel, still staring at her from his perch on the log. What is going on? Feeling scared and confused, she crossed her arms in front of herself protectively. What did you mean about the wild side? Where is my family? She asked with panic in her voice. Mickey looked at the girl, his own confusion showing itself through his upturned lips. You came here. He pointed a tiny finger at her, then downward, finally panning the vast horizon around them in one sweeping motion. This is the wild side. How do you not know this? Nobody comes here by accident. Nobody can come here by accident. The Ancient Ones made sure of that. What Ancient Ones? What wild side? Alicia flung her arms into the air with such exasperation that Mickey ducked ever so slightly, so he would not be accidentally hit. I don't understand what you're talking about, Alicia shouted at the squirrel in frustration. It dawned on Mickey that perhaps this human really didn't know about this land. It was clear to him that she was frightened. Okay, let's start at the beginning, at least as far as I know it. He sat comfortably on the tree stump and motioned her to sit with him, but there was not enough room. Alicia felt a wave of dizziness from the confusion sweep through her head, rocking her back onto her heels. Slowly, she lowered herself to solid ground, nestling herself into the grass, eyes drifting frantically left and right, her mind still searching for anything familiar. There was really nothing she could do but listen to what the squirrel had to say. These stories have been passed down through generations, from my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and far beyond that. Mickey paused to collect his thoughts while Alicia fidgeted to get comfortable on the prickly grass and rested her chin in her hands. Her arms were wrapped snugly around her legs, and with her hands nestled atop her knees. She was curled up so tightly, as if to protect herself from what she was about to hear. The Ancient Ones are very old beings. There is Thunderbolt on the top of the mountain, who watches over the lands and strikes with powerful lightning. Vulcan, who lives in the hot springs and provides a warm spot to gather during the long, cold winters. And old Silver King from down in the depths, ruling over the underground dwellers and hoarding the strongest magic for himself. Mickey paused for a minute in case his new friend had any questions. She remained silent and staring, so he continued. It is told that ages ago the lands of magic and humans mingled, sharing thoughts, ideas, and resources. But the humans' desire for growth and expansion caused them to be greedy with resources. They began chopping down trees of the forest by hundreds and not caring about the animals that called the woods home. That's awful, the young girl said. From the other side, interrupted. Mickey continued, seemingly unaware of Alicia's reaction. They diverted streams and rivers for their own use, leaving a formerly lush and green regions dry and turning brown from lack of water. They mined precious metals, blasting away at rocks and collapsing mountains. But many animal families were forced to leave the lands of their ancestors that their ancestors had called home. The Ancient Ones, seeing this happen to their beloved lands, came together for the first time ever, using their combined magic to create a barrier to split the two realms, forever separating lands of humans and magic. Let humans destroy their own resources, was their attitude. The lands of magic would recover and continue to thrive on their own. Alicia listened to Mickey's story with wonder and amazement, and a small seed of hope grew in her chest. So these Ancient Ones, they have great magic, right? They could take down the barrier and let me cross back. The Ancient Ones are gone, Mickey replied, dashing Alicia's hopes. It's said that so much magic was required to build the barrier that after it was created, they returned to their separate homes to try and recover their lost energies. They've not been seen since. With this disappointment came understanding of her situation, and tears finally flooded Alicia's eyes. So I'm stuck here? Alicia wailed, hiding her face in the gap between her knees and chest, heaving great sobs. But you must have incredible magic yourself. Mickey insisted. You came through the barrier. You crossed over. Only the most powerful could do such a thing. But I didn't mean to. Alicia could barely speak through the tears, her body shaking from their force. I didn't use any power or magic. I just stepped forward. Then just step back, Mickey said. I can't! I don't know how! She screamed, slamming her small fists on the ground, wanting to punch something to release her sorrow and frustration. Mickey, not knowing how to respond, simply watched. Alicia sat there, her sobs diminishing, while Mickey by her side waited patiently. What am I going to do? She asked, hiccuping, with the last of her tears. My mom, my dad, everything I know and love is gone. Well, not everything. I'm still here. Yes, but you're a squirrel. How can you help me? There you go, being impolite again. Mickey stood ready to walk away, but turned to look up at his new friend, who was still sitting in her spot on the ground. I understand all of this is a shock right now, so I'll continue to forgive your behavior. He looked up at her with stern, focused eyes. But you are lucky that I found you. He paused, his expression softening as he thought for a moment. I'm going to be your guide here on the wild side, at least until you learn your way around. I know where all the best berries are. I know those too, Alicia exclaimed. I know all about huckleberries. Oh yeah? You think you're so smart? Mickey was relieved to be having a normal conversation. Do you know where the best burrows are to stay warm at night? Burrows? Alicia cocked her head sideways, feeling slightly confused, and looked at Mickey. What would I know about burrows? She said, sadness returning to her voice. The best way to stay warm at night is snuggle between my parents on the couch in front of the fire, with a warm comforter draped over our legs, or in my warmest winter coat when my friends and I are outside. Tears began to form in her eyes again. That was the exact plan for tonight. My mom was going to read to me in front of the fire. A small sob escaped her throat. Mickey paused in his questioning, noticing again how hard this must be on the girl. Alicia, please don't worry. I really can help you, he said with concern in his voice, his small fuzzy features softening. Burrows can be very nice and warm, and I'll snuggle with you since you don't have a warm winter coat or a fire or a cabin. I'll help you search for what remaining water there is so you can drink. And most important of all, I'll help you avoid the eyes of Bristleback. Alicia wiped tears away with her hand. What's a bristleback? She stood up from the warm spot she had created sitting in the grass, ready to trust and follow Mickey. Ha! See, you don't know everything. He responded, allowing a little bit of mockery to return to his voice, but only a little. That's why I'm going to keep you company and be your guide, Mickey said, some of his delight and belligerence returning as well. Listen, I understand you miss your family. I really do. I haven't seen my family in ages either. I think I have brothers and sisters that I have never met. But I'm here with you, and I promise to teach you all that I can. Mickey hopped up onto a low branch on a nearby tree to make sure Alicia could hear him. In return, you can let me ride on your shoulder, and I'll keep the nasty foxes away. They're always yapping and fussing and trying to dig in your home and eat you. Never a moment's rest with those nasty things around. Oh, and the jaybirds with their constant screeching. You just find a pine nut and they come swooping down to steal it. Go find your own food, camp robbers. Speaking of food, he pointed at Alicia, you can help find food too. Alicia dried her tears and looked at Mickey. She didn't know what to make of this creature. She was used to feeding squirrels peanuts out of her hand and watching them caper around in the front yard of the cabin. And now here's one standing in front of her, talking to her. Actually talking. Was she going crazy? She felt lost and alone. How could this person, not even a person, just a small animal, help her survive? Sure, her dad had taught her much over the past few years, but she was still young. She was terrified and anguished over the disappearance of everything she'd known. Her dad was gone, her mom was gone, her friends must be gone too. The way she felt right now, it might well be the whole world that was gone. Could she really trust this one tiny creature and hope for the companionship that he offered? She didn't know, but it seemed at the moment her options were limited and her mind was foggy. She was strong and spent hours upon hours by herself in these woods. perhaps the squirrel was right. She was willing to learn more, and maybe with his help could find her way back to the world she knew. It would be good to have a friend right now. She set her jaw and made a decision. Okay, Mickey, it's a deal. She reached out and the squirrel hopped into her hand, scampering up her arm onto her shoulder. This is going to be grand, he pronounced. Now about that food, let's head east. I'm hungry, and I know where there's a good patch of berry bushes. Alicia was too. She and her father had not brought any food with them to the beach. So there was food east, then east it was. She searched for a strong stick, just a little longer than waist height, and found an old fallen branch that looked sturdy. It was always a good idea to have a walking stick when setting out on an adventure. We'll read one more chapter today. It's chapter 7, The Drying. They walked for an hour, all the while Mickey chatted away on her shoulder about this thing or that. The scent of fresh pine trees was in the air, reminding her of the family room at home during Christmas season. As they walked, the unmistakable buzz of small mosquitoes filled her ears, causing Alicia to swing her arms wildly to chase them away. Mickey dodged her swats at the irritating bugs and chattered non-stop, describing all the bushes, plants, and mushrooms, even though Alicia knew quite a few of them already. She was fascinated by the little furry creature sitting on her shoulder, so happily blabbering on, and she politely left him to continue uninterrupted. After all, there was still so much knowledge to be gained, she thought. Douglas firs and lodgepole pines covered the hills, while in the open spaces they could see the beautiful red and orange colors of Indian paintbrush, or the purples of lupine and lavender. The forest was full of so much variety if you took the time to look. Those are morels, Mickey said excitedly. They're a special kind of mushroom that is unusually difficult to find, but after a forest fire, oh my gosh, they grow like crazy. Delicious. And 1 second later, he tapped Alicia's cheek and pointed. You see that one with the red marks on the stem? That's nature's way of saying, stay away. Other times, he would draw her attention to the sounds in the woods. Do you hear that? They stopped moving and focused on the hissing sound, peppered with occasional plops, which Alicia imagined were tiny pebbles cascading into a pile. There's a stream nearby. Look for a group of thick green vegetation or a swarm of dragonflies. Sure enough, Alicia found a trickle of cool, clean water near the banks that were lined with moss. She could drink from it by cupping her hands and scooping up the delicious liquid. At last they found a wonderfully big patch of huckleberries, ripe and plump. Alicia began picking and popping them into her mouth as fast as she could, savoring the delicious sweetness, with just a hint of bitter from the skins. The fat purple berries stained her fingers, lips, and tongue. Alicia smiled at Mickey, feeling the first hint of happiness since leaving the beach, that she was quickly growing to think of as her world. After gorging on berries, Alicia and Mickey rested on a pile of soft pine needles. For the first time, she really took in her surroundings and noticed how brown much of the landscape was. How odd, especially in July. The snows would have melted from the higher mountain tops and flowed down to moisten the soil, creating all sorts of green growth. Then she remembered what Mickey had told her. You said the land was drying up. What do you mean? Just what I said, Mickey replied. The water is getting taken and there is no longer any left for the smaller plants or forest creatures. We call it the drying. The drying, the young botany enthusiast searched her mind for the term, but could not find it. But where is the water going? The land should be filled with runoff from the snowmelt. It's because of old Grand Tree. Who's that? Alicia asked. Grand Tree is the tallest, wildest, most ginormous tree in the whole forest, Mickey exclaimed, stretching himself as much as he could to demonstrate the massiveness of this tree. He is so tall, his top almost touches the clouds, and his branches stretch out further than Bristleback's arms. He reaches out so wide he blocks the sun, and nothing can grow underneath him. He stands alone in a huge, dusty, barren clearing. His giant roots reach far underground, and he sucks up every bit of water, keeping it all to himself. I don't know how much longer this forest can survive. Hasn't anybody spoken with him? Surely he must see what's happening. We are all too small, Mickey explained. We try to speak, but he is so tall he cannot hear when we call up to him. Or if he does, he just ignores it. We don't know what to do. Many of the creatures are planning to make a long journey south in search of better lands. But this is my home and I just can't leave. Alicia understood, once again feeling the loss of her own home intensely. She forced those thoughts out of her head and stood up. I guess we should be on our way. You mentioned knowing of burrows to sleep in. It's getting dark and I don't want to spend the night under the stars. Oh yes, I know all the best burrows. So warm and cozy. Let's go. They set off again, heading east, towards what? Alicia could not say. She only hoped that she would discover some clue to finding her way home again. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's reading from the passage at Moose Beach. And if you want to read a little bit more, we do have a page on our website with some sample chapters from all of our books, and you can go to callingbardbooks.com/read-now to check out chapters from all these books. And we hope that you will join us again next Wednesday to read a bit more from the passage at Moose Beach, or this Friday at 5 p.m. when we will most likely be coloring a bit from A Quick Successions of Busy Nothings, which is our Jane Austen coloring book. So thank you so much for joining us.